Launch Crew. It's been about 2 weeks since the ASU+GSV Summit out in San Diego, so today we wanted to bring you some highlights and takeaways from the session. The week kicked off with a keynote from Michael Moe. He's the CEO and founder of GSV, and he really set the tone for the entire week with a huge key stat, which is that during coronavirus, 1.6 billion students were thrust online and told to sink or swim. You heard me, that's about 20% of the population. So this huge pivotal moment has left our industry forever changed. So ASU+GSV named the theme for the week BC and AD, before coronavirus and after disease, because everything is going to change and look different in the education industry from here forward. He shared a key stat, which is that 75% of students are actually not the 18 to 25-year-old students that colleges are set up for. This means that they might look different, they might come from different backgrounds. We need to improve access and equality. So diversity and equality and access to education was a key theme that rose throughout the week. A second and a top opportunity that GSV noted was lifelong learning. So this traditional student that colleges were previously set up for might no longer be 18 to 25, they might be a bit older. Michael used an excellent metaphor, which is if you're asking someone, are you fit? And they respond, well, yeah, I ran a marathon in 2005, you might not actually be that fit anymore. So if we're asking employees, when was the last time you took a course relevant to what you're currently doing, and your answer is 2005, you might be a little bit out of date. And then the last topic that really rose to the top throughout the week was transforming higher ed and all about education economics. So in the past, if price equaled quality and elite equals scarcity, today elite should really mean excellence. But defining what excellence is and how we can transform higher ed to deliver on that was a key theme throughout the week.
My takeaway from Michael's intro and really the event overall is that our market POV is on the cutting edge of the industry discussion right now. Michael Moe talked about this in his intro, but we've witnessed such a massive shift in the marketplace over the last year and a half. And it's the big things that we've been talking about really over the last year, right? Evolution in the student profile, preferences shifting towards online, demand for equity, new program mix, growing competition and consolidation. I just rattled off so many things, but these were all present in ASU+GSV's summit last year. What's different now is that the industry is realizing that none of this is going to go away and we're going to have to innovate. There's no getting out of this. And I think many were in that camp last year, but the effects of the pandemic have gone on longer than anyone could have anticipated, which is only further solidifying this new reality, this new student behavior, and entrenching these trends.
So Abby and I are going to walk you through 3 big takeaway areas. The first, equality and access. The second, lifelong learning. And the last, transforming higher ed. In our first takeaway category, solving for the education gap and increasing access to education, I was really heartened to hear that this category existed. There weren't quite as many sessions or videos in this area as there were others, but where there were, the content was really focused on doubling back on the universities and the institutions that made grandiose promises to make progress in these areas and then hold them truly accountable to whether or not that progress had been made, which is always a good thing. There was one session that I really enjoyed during the week, and that's how higher education can accelerate equity. It had institutions reflecting on what role they played in accelerating equity. There are a few different ways to think about it. The first is, of course, the most straightforward, and that's just improving your representation in your student body. So that would be hitting parity with the census population and making sure that all groups are represented. But when you dig beneath the surface a little bit, they also took a look at whether or not universities were following these same recruiting methods when it pertains to their staff. So how does university professors reflect the census population, and how can they really strive to make improvements there? And then they ended on a really interesting stat, which I think still leaves a lot of room for growth. And it was looking at 2013 to 2019 and whether universities were both growing their representation of underrepresented minorities and also improving their retention amongst these populations of underrepresented minorities. And what they found was that only 16% of universities can say, yes, they were doing this. But furthermore, when they dug a little bit deeper, they saw that only 4% were making actual meaningful progress against growing representation and improving completion amongst those demographics, which to me says there's really a lot of room to improve, and I hope that the remainder of 2021 and 2022 can show us growth in these areas.
I totally agree, Alex. I thought it was so important that closing education gaps and inequities was a main theme of ASU GSV this year. I'd say there's definitely a long way to go, but the more that we talk about this, the more that we hold institutions accountable, the more progress that we'll make. All institutions are grappling with the same challenges, with the same questions here. What support do students need, especially first generation and students of color? And how can I offer that? Is there a change management process that I need to undergo with my team and with my faculty? What's been tested and learned in the industry? Everyone wants to know. What we do know, at least from our research, is that students value diversity and inclusion in their student body and they want institutions to take action. But it does come down to the experience that they're having in the classroom with faculty and the support models in place, not only to help them make it to graduation, but also thrive and be prepared for a job. I would say education can't fix everything. There are still massive earning gaps that we have to close, but closing gaps in education access, quality, and affordability are definitely going to go a long way. So there's a lot of talk about this, right? Different goals that institutions can set and testing different strategies. So we'll see how that evolves into longstanding action and progress, and then what we can celebrate at ASU GSV next year.
This year at ASU GSV, there were a lot of sessions on upskilling and also alternative pathways, some of which were even hosted by Google. But I had the pleasure of joining a session called Employers as Educators, and it was really great because it was a panel. It had a few different speakers from Temasek, GSU, Amazon, Degreed, and what was great was to hear their varying opinions. Again, we'll share a link to this, but I loved it because what they talked about was how this area, so alternative pathways and short courses, how that's really been changed by COVID. So really fresh, really new takeaways. One of the stats that they started the session with was that more than 90% of C-levels now expect their employees to get retrained throughout their tenure, which I thought was really promising and truly kind of hints at the size of the opportunity here for upskilling and reskilling. But when we start to think about some of the largest changes in the last 12 to 18 months, a lot of it was driven by the workforce and everything that had to happen to bring workforces online remotely. And knowing that your employers need to change and change is going to happen quickly, the mark of a good organization is now how quickly can they accomplish that change. So there's a focus on quality and how quickly they can transform their people in order to really help accomplish the new and ever-changing needs of the business. So that was one change, just this acceleration in how quickly can we improve and change our skill sets among our employees. And then one of the other things that they kind of talked about was in the past there used to be maybe a hesitancy to provide your workforce with transferable skills because that might potentially lead to your employees wanting to leave the company, start somewhere else. But now there's been a total shift in how that's perceived, and there's a greater willingness to give your employees these transferable skills because it's almost seen as a need to compete. So employers now need to upskill their own employees to help them either get further in their current job or maybe they go somewhere else, but ideally they feel that rewarding experience of getting the skills and stay with their employer. So to me it seems like there's definitely a lot of pull and demand for upskilling, reskilling, whether it's because employees sense that their executives want them to do so or because their employers are offering that, but I think we can anticipate continued accelerated growth in the area.
This topic was my personal favorite because Aaron and I also presented our latest research on what we're calling the new value exchange emerging in the industry. And the new value exchange centers on student values shifting and universities needing to innovate to meet that demand because there's a gap right now. We're seeing a 3x shift in student preference for non-degree programs. So that's online short courses, certificates, and boot camps. And that spike has happened just in the last 6 months alone, which is crazy. It's already starting to have an impact on IT and business degrees in particular. Now, I believe that the biggest catalyst propelling this trend is that employers are accepting non degree certificates on par or in place of a degree, especially now with this big focus on upskilling and reskilling, both from the learner need and the employer perspective. But we're also seeing a growth in values like time to completion, flexibility, and a clearer line of sight to ROI, because there's this growing perception by learners that non-degree programs better prepare them for job-ready skills. Program diversification is one of the most important future-proofing conversations that we can have with our clients right now to make sure that they're staying competitive in the marketplace, but that they're also growing with us. Marketing of new non-degree offerings is a huge incremental marketing opportunity for us to capture.
Within transforming the higher education industry category, I had the pleasure of joining Michael Crow's session. He's the president of Arizona State University, and I really enjoyed his view on how we're going to transform higher ed. And his is really one of democratization, and it's that ASU is not going to be one of the few, but rather one of the many higher education institutions that will radically change their approach in the coming years. And I was really excited to hear this. I think we all are. We've heard a little bit of it. But some of the ways that he envisions this transformation taking place really fills me with optimism. The first is that it's really all about making faculty the center of the university and the central asset. That's because they need to believe in their product, particularly as the modality changes. You might not see students in seats anymore. You might be teaching to a camera. You might be teaching online, and you need to believe in your skills to do that in order to really deliver for your students. The second is changing that concept of the traditional student. Again, it might not be your traditional 18 to 24-year-old who goes back to their dorm after your class. This could be a constant lifelong learner, maybe a part of a subscription model. ASU in particular is now taking 8 to 10 different areas of study where they're allowing their students to enroll and complete synchronously. So they might never show up on campus, but they are matriculated and they are taking classes at the same time as their on-campus peers, which is really interesting. And then the last thing that he talked about, which I really think is maybe the most important, is that he sees the success as the student as the outcome of the public university. So it's kind of a shift that I heard throughout a few different sessions, which is universities starting to think of the student's success as their own success, arguably the way it should have always been, but shifting the objective from just enrollments to now retention, and then even furthermore, graduation, job success, career success, and really hanging your hat as an institution on what you can do for your students in the long run.
It's always so inspiring to listen to Michael Crow. His session teed up the theme of transformation and how a pervasive transformation really is. And this actually ties well to some of the ideas that we've been sharing with our clients in the speaker series over the last year. Opportunities like faculty as brands for the school, new models for teaching where we need to get away from the sage on the stage to learning by doing, and how students values are shifting to job ready skills and ROI, and better serving the masses versus building up elite schools with walls. I'd say that one other area that stood out to me and ties very well to actually enabling transformation at scale are the evolving conversations around buy, build, or partner. We're seeing consolidation heating up, particularly with nonprofits buying for profit schools in their bid to grow online infrastructure and capabilities. And there are a number of different examples on how to do this. PG and Kaplan, U of A with Sovio, UMass with Brandman. UAGC's president, Paul, spoke about the challenges that they're facing with change management and how important it is to ensure that there's a culture fit and that you have faculty brought in. Our playbook here is going to be so important as those key players continue to evolve with growing consolidation in the marketplace.